What is up, everybody? We are making some planter boxes today. I saw these on Pinterest, and unlike the last Pinterest project I did, these actually came with some plans and a cut list. I went ahead and wrote the cut list down on my handy-dandy whiteboard. I actually made two of these, but I'm only going to show you making one of them because they are identical to each other. Because these boxes were going outside, I made them out of spruce, which is nice, cheap white wood you can get at any of your big box stores. Also, because they're going outside, I did not strive for perfection here. That being said, I did not joint or plane any of these boards. I just cut them to length and put the whole thing together. I started off here just making all my cuts to length on the miter saw. Once I had everything cut down to length, I laid it all out on the workbench and proceeded to sand it all with 120. So next I got a carpenter square. I took 3 pieces of 1x6, butted the ends up against the square, and then I took the 1x3, put them on the top and the bottom, and Brad nailed it together. I did this times 4. So the flat sides of these are the inside of the planter box. That's where all of your fasteners are going to be. I took each one of them and I put pocket holes on both sides on all 4 pieces of these. After that, I pre-drilled holes, countersunk them, and screwed them together. This was because we did not joint or plane these boards, and I needed some screws to kind of tighten it all up for any cupping that was in the whitewood. On each one of these, you're going to add a 2x2 onto the side. I pre-drilled some holes into the pocket holes because I wanted to prevent any splitting in the 2x2. I also used a clamp here because, as you know, sometimes when you're screwing in pocket holes, it can shift the wood a little bit. You don't necessarily have to use a clamp, but I find it much easier. Okay, next we're going to start piecing the boxes together. Take 2 of your sides, clamp them together or hold them together. Clamp is easier, of course. Get yourself a square, make sure it is square, and all you got to do after that is pocket hole screw from one side into the 2x2 on the other side. I tried to purposefully align my pocket holes when I drilled them a little bit offset from each other so the screws wouldn't run into each other. After that, you're just going to repeat that exact same process for all the sides. Alright, next we're going to work on these cross pieces. I measured the diagonal on one side. I added about 1.5 inches so I'd have some extra to work with. Then I cut 4 pieces to that length. I took the piece over, I lined one corner with the top corner of where it was going to be inlaid and clamped it in place. Then I measured the angle at the top so I could go ahead and make the first cut. I transferred the angle over to the miter saw and then I cut off as little amount of wood so as to leave the corner that was going into the top corner where it was going to be inlaid. Then I flipped it over and cut the same angle on the other side. Next I put it on there, nailed it together, and then I did the exact same thing for the other 3 sides. Okay, this next part was a little tricky. I measured this distance here and then I added a little bit to it so I'd have some extra to work with. I cut 8 pieces to that length, and then I cut one side with the same angle as the other pieces that I just put on. I took it over, put it in place, and clamped it. Then I measured the angle that was created between that piece and the existing cross piece and subtracted it from 90. You can barely see the angle is about 83, so I ended up putting a 7-degree cut on these on the other side. Because I had left some extra to work with, I had to make this exact angle cut a few times. I just kept taking it over, putting it in place, seeing that it was a little too long, and trimming off a slight amount until it was the right length. Then I put it in place and Brad nailed it together. I did the exact same thing for the other side. Then when I was going to put it in place to nail it, I got a straight edge and ran it across just to make sure that it was going to be even. And more sanding. This is also 120 grit. I also put some filler on all the seams. You probably don't have to do this. I guess I'm just kind of particular about it. Okay, so the original plans didn't have anything on the top of this. They just left all this end grain exposed. I didn't really like the look of that, so I got some measurements to go ahead and make some flat pieces cut on the top with a little bit of an overhang to make it look slightly decorative. After I cut all those pieces to length, I went over and I put a 45 on all of them. Next, I just laid all the pieces out on the workbench. I got a square, put it in place, and Brad nailed it together from each side. That cool vacuum noise you heard was me accidentally turning on my dust collection. Whoops. I had run out of filler right before this, but I just used spackle. Seems to work fine for me. Okay, so I put this frame in place and I just tried to measure and get a nice equal overhang on all sides. Then I just Brad nailed it and then I filled the holes with spackle. And then guess what I did? Okay, so obviously the whole planter box is not going to be filled with soil. I wanted to make basically like a shelf or a bottom to this part of the way down the planter box. That being said, I needed something for some cross pieces to rest on inside the box. I set the table saw to 1 inch. You're going to see me cut 4 pieces here, but the truth is you only need 2 per box. I laid them all out, I pre-drilled some holes, and I countersunk the holes. So I busted out the square, I measured down 8 inches on each side, and I made a couple marks. Not much to be said here, I just put these pieces in line with the lines I had drawn and screwed them in place. So the bottom of these were going to be made out of 3 pieces of 1x6. I just put them all in a stack here and cut them all to the same length on the miter saw. Then I took them over to the table saw and I ripped off a little bit of them so that there would be a little bit of a gap between them for water to fall through. I put them in place to test fit to make sure it all looked right, and it did. The only thing left to do was take it outside and paint it. I just did 2 coats of white spray paint, and that was it. And there you go. Thanks for watching. You guys are awesome. I appreciate everything, and I'll see you next time.